Have a good day to everybody. Hope you're enjoying your weekend. It is Saturday, the 25th of February, just a couple of days off the end of the month, and indeed the end of Meteorological Winter 2022 2023. Isn't that remarkable when you really think about it? All about the build up to the winter forecast for months and months, and a lot of work, preparation, and effort has been put into it, and all of a sudden we're about to wave goodbye, at least for meteorological winter. Anyway, winter, of course, as you know, lingers on, and it's all eyes, of course, in the month of March now with regards to the influence of the stratospheric warming that took place last week. It looks as if the upcoming work week we're going to see that secondary, potentially stronger warming than what initially triggered the major sudden stratospheric warming. That, of course, is the winds reversing, the mean winds within the polar stratosphere reversion from a west to east, to an east to west direction, and of course we'll have to wait and see the response that takes place. The models are have been firming up a wee bit on the fact that we are seeing that downward reversal in winds through the stratosphere, and of course still remains open to question exactly the influence we will see within the 500 millibar hemispheric pattern as we go forward. But there has been a lot of interesting things going on in Eastern North America, for example, and other parts of the world with regards to global extremes. So in tomorrow's video, I will look at the global extremes in a global weather and climate report. I think it's edition 30 now, actually, so pretty hard to believe, actually. I think they started off back in June last year. So we'll look at the global extremes and other aspects in tomorrow's video. No video in the last couple of days. I was celebrating my 40th birthday a couple of nights down in Fort William, so that was very pleasant indeed. I didn't intend to actually do a video yesterday, but yeah, when you have a couple of drinks during the afternoon, tend to kind of say to yourself, maybe just leave it. So yeah, it's a nice couple of days, relaxing, and the car didn't budge. It was nice to not have to drive for a day or so. So yeah, had a nice couple of days off, and yeah, so we're back to the grind, so to speak, once again. But I do appreciate you watching as always. If you haven't already done so, please hit that subscribe button and keep up to date with all that's going on, not just across the UK and Europe, but across the planet as well. Like I say, plenty of interesting things going on weather-wise around the world at the moment here. So we will look at that in tomorrow's episode of the Global Weather and Climate Report. The Julian Oscillation, by the way, is certainly going into interesting phases. Instead of it being in the warm phases, which I believe delivered the very mild February, and we'll look at that in just a second. Stuck in phase 3 and then crept through phase 4, 5, and into 6. This is certainly warm phases for our part of the world, but also much of the northern hemisphere here. But now that it's in phase 7 and it looks as if it's going to try and go into phase 8, that certainly changes the dynamics in the upper air pattern. The influence of strong convection over the western portion of the Pacific Ocean tends to lead to a buildup of pressure, so reverses the height field over the northern hemisphere, as opposed to being low pressure and a positive Arctic oscillation dominated pattern. It then goes more negative, so therefore you have more positives. So if you catch my drift, you have more blocking over the high latitudes. That kind of forces the weakening of the zonal westerlies within the mid latitudes, and indeed it increases blocking within the high latitudes. It forces cold air out of the Arctic further south here, so weakens the jet stream and allows a buildup of pressure. But this is the month of February, according to the CDAS data here off weatherbell.com. Plenty of warm conditions across the northern portion of both Europe and Asia. So an incredibly mild February overall. And I suppose after a good December, a reasonably good January, I think I can hold my hands up and say that February has not materialized as much as I thought it may have done. But of course, we have had the major southern stratospheric warming as forecasted in the prediction back at the beginning of the month. So it will be, it's all about the timing. And of course, when you're putting out a forecast that was issued at the end of November, around the 1st of December, for an event to take place later down the road, maybe say a month and a half, 2 months later down the road. I think for the fact that it actually occurred in the first place, it is something to take a little bit of comfort from. But of course, timing can be very, very difficult to predict. It's really a guessing game. But when you throw in all the dynamics, all the parameters in place, I came up with the ideas that I did have, and I think it's not been a bad winter overall. I'm pretty pleased with it, generally speaking, despite the fact that it has been a much warmer February than I first thought. So certainly, as always, I hold my hand up when I have got it wrong, and certainly the month of February has indeed been wrong. This is Europe for the month of February, and incredibly mild, as you can see here. It'll be interesting to see how this stacks up with regards to the past Februaries. I think 2019 was an incredibly mild February overall, and that was, of course, with a major southern stratospheric warming, may I add. Very cold conditions flooded North America, but we, in fact, had a very mild month during the month of February, despite that southern stratospheric warming taking place. And this is the current temperatures as of recording late on Saturday afternoon, and not a great deal of cold, a little bit of chillier across the central portion of Europe, Scandinavia, but nothing significant, nothing extreme for this time of the year, that's for sure. And when you look at the UK, we can see here that we've got cooler conditions than what we've seen in lately. Of course, temperatures on the 23rd reached 17 Celsius in Suffolk, and we've got temperatures 4, 5, 6 Celsius, 7s and 8s across the south. So average to marginally below average across the UK. And looking at the pressure chart, you can see here that that area of high pressure is building across the northern half of the UK here now. Many sites recording 1027 millibars across particularly the northern half of the UK. But we've got that high to the north, means we've got some kind of chilly easterly winds coming in, and we are actually going to increase that chill as we go into the start of the new work week. Actually, this is for today, and you can see here it's a tale of two halves. So of course the eastern side of that area of high pressure is tapping Scandinavian air, while on the western flank it's actually tapping air from northwest Africa and Iberia. Still chilly compared to normal actually across the southwest of Europe, but you notice here that that air mass loses a lot of its sting as it rotates around the centre and over a warmer than normal North Atlantic. It loses a lot of that cold air even at 5,000 feet once that air mass cycles over top of warmer than normal air temperatures. So as we play through, this is off the GFS, and you can see here that that area of high pressure continues to build overhead of Scotland, and it becomes anchored in place, maintaining this incredibly dry theme that we've got going. And indeed, that is going to be the case through the remainder of this month and into the early portion of March. Paying close attention to this area of colder air at 850 over the central portion of Europe. That is drifting underneath this area of high pressure, maintaining this difference between cold in the east, milder in the west, as you can see here. And that cold air will drift, lose a little bit of intensity according to the GFS, but it will drift across the southern half of the UK as we progress into the early portion of the week. The area of high pressure maintains itself, as you can see here. Then what we've got going is, notice it's not going anywhere, and certainly the CMWF is saying this as well. It's not going anywhere particularly fast, but we have to really, I think the key to this is going to be whereabouts that area of high pressure goes. But notice here, as we progress to the middle portion of next week, yes, we've still got chilly air rotating underneath that high. It stays in place, and it's an incredibly persistent pressure pattern. And then it's as we go into the middle and second half of next week, if that high manages to shift just a little bit further west and north, you then open the door to something a little bit colder coming in from the north and from the east. And you can see here that that area of high pressure towards the very end of the period here, so this is into a week on Tuesday, so a long way out, but notice the position of the high shifted further west, opening the door to colder air coming in from the north here. Looking at the overview chart, and you can see here that that area of high pressure simply goes nowhere fast. So precipitation is going to be minimal apart from that cold winds coming in off the North Sea across the southern half of the UK. So i.e. England, I think really more so than Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland. We could see some convective showers developing in that flow as that cold area of air mass out of Central Europe drifts underneath the high and into the southern half of the UK. You're cooling down the column, and you may support some convective snow showers across the south and southeast of the UK into the early and middle portion of next week here. But you can see here right the way through into the early portion of the month, notice an area of low pressure here actually is seen by the GFS, and that could simply enhance some sort of moisture here, possible shower activity underneath the high by the time we reach the middle and second half of next week here. But it's not really a noteworthy feature. And you notice here as we continue to play through the loop, that area of high pressure is just relentlessly persistent. So no great change in the overall setup as we progress through the upcoming week. It will stay chilly, it will stay dry, and remember, it's towards the end of next week that it looks as if that is when we enter the time frame that we need to look above to see what influence that major sun stratospheric warming has had on our pattern. Where that area of high pressure goes is going to be critical as to the type of weather and air mass we receive later down the road. So like I've said already, if you haven't already done so, please hit that subscribe button. I do appreciate those who have already done it and your support. It certainly has been an interesting time, and let's wait and see what happens. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday, enjoy the rest of your weekend, and do indeed hit that like button, share with your friends and family, and I'll hopefully see you again tomorrow with the global weather and climate report. Stay tuned. Bye for now.